Our next session is The Great Resignation, Uncovering Opportunity in Challenge. Please welcome Delia Gutierrez McLaughlin, Principal Engagement Lead, Amazon Web Services, Kennon Harrison, VP Workforce Partnerships, Revature, LaShaun Solomon, Head of DE&I Partnership, Development and Strategy, Pyramid Consulting, Inc., and Ileana Acosta, Channel Sales Manager, Global Co-Chair, LinkedIn's Hola, Hispanics of LinkedIn Alliance, LinkedIn.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Delia Gutierrez McLaughlin, and I am Principal Engagement Lead for Amazon Web Services on our Professional Services Division. I want to welcome everyone here this afternoon as we talk about our topic today, the Great Resignation, Uncovering Opportunity in Challenge. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our illustrious panel. Once I introduce them, to give us a little bit about themselves and share a fun fact. I'll go first. I've been with Amazon since last May of 2021, but I've had an illustrious career of over 20 plus years in technology. And I am a High Tech 100 2022 awardee as well. I have had a long tenure with High Tech, and I'm honored to be with all of you today. So let's introduce our panel. I'm going to start off with Kennon Harrison. He is VP of Workforce Partners for Reverture. Kennon, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Delia. I want to first thank everybody on the call, everybody at High Tech and 305 for having me and for doing such a great job putting this event together. This is really an honor and it's an important conversation. So thank you guys. I'm VP of Workforce Partnerships here at Revature, and I oversee all of our partnerships from universities, colleges, diversity organizations, NPOs and NPOs in conjunction with my colleague Jen, as well as our organizations that are trying to help people who are learning get a job at the end of that learning. We are the largest employer of entry-level software engineering and technical talent in the United States. We're really proud of that. And the work that we do is what keeps me up at night and gets me up in the morning. So really, really excited to be here. And Delia, thank you.
Thank you. A little fun fact about yourself?
Yes, fun fact. Ileana said something that's not on your LinkedIn profile, so I'll plug that for her. Something that's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I grew up on a cattle farm, which is a long way from where I am now. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you and welcome. All right, LaShaun Solomon, our next guest panelist speaker, is the head of DE&I partnerships for Pyramid Consulting. LaShaun.
Hola y buenas tardes, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. I am thrilled to be a part of the Spring Summit here for High Tech. I joined Pyramid Consulting in January of this year as the head of DE&I Partnership Development and Strategy. In my role, I oversee our diversity recruiting efforts as well as how we align with the community, along with how we create a place of belonging for all of our employees as well as our consultants.
Wonderful, wonderful. Little fun fact?
Yes, fun fact. So many people don't know this, but I was actually in the marching band in high school, and I played the flute and the piccolo. For anyone who has seen the movie Drumline, way back in the day, starring Nick Cannon, that was my high school band in the movie.
Wow, wow, wonderful. Thank you. All right. And rounding out our panel today is Ileana Acosta. She is Channel Sales Manager for LinkedIn. Ileana.
Hola, everyone. And LaShaun, I have absolutely watched that movie like 15 times, so now I have to rewatch it so I can see the band. Hi, everyone. I'm a senior manager within our channel sales business, within our LinkedIn Marketing Solutions realm. And my team focuses on building out global partnerships with ad tech partners that essentially together we drive incremental value for our shared customers. I'm also the global co-chair of our Hispanics of LinkedIn Alliance, ERG, which I've been a co-chair for a little under a year now. Been with the company for about 3.5 years and have been incredibly excited about the mission of the organization and my particular team. We'll get into some details later, but fun fact about me, I visited about 38 countries. I should have been around 50 at this point, but a little thing called COVID interrupted that over the last couple of years. So I'm hoping to get that travel bug going again this year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here today and wanting to be included on this conversation today. Before we get started, I noticed I didn't say what my fun fact was. So it is on my LinkedIn, but it's way at the bottom. So if you don't read all the way to the bottom, you won't see it. So my husband and I both have this fear of water. So we decided we were going to surpass this challenge and learn how to swim. And so we both took swimming classes to learn how to swim. And that was our goal. And we both failed. So this is why I had all my kids learn how to swim. All 4 of my kids know how to swim because one of them is saving me. Okay. So let's dive into our panel today. And as I said, our topic is the Great Resignation, uncovering opportunity and challenge. So the COVID-19 pandemic really set off an unprecedented churn in the US labor market. Widespread job losses in the early months of the pandemic gave way to a very tight labor markets in 2021. And that was driven in part by what's come to be known as the Great Resignation. According to Pew Research, our nation's quit rate, it reached a 20-year high last November. So very, very high on that scale. So our workforce is choosing themselves in 2022. And not only are they choosing themselves, but they're actively saying hasta, nunca to organizations that aren't proactively prioritizing minority retention strategies, reskilling and upskilling, and looking at gender equity and representation and in pay. And of course, the list continues, but these are some of the top topics. But it is more than what I've outlined above. Our workforce has been going through a transformation, if you will, and the pandemic brought that moment of reflection for everyone. Questions such as, what do I want to do? Is the work I'm doing now fulfilling work, or would I want to focus on something else? And if not now, then when? So all of this has been going on through the pandemic and still is going on now. And in this panel, we'll discuss the most meaningful questions as we contemplate how to proactively develop some pivot strategies that leaders can take right now to help retain our Hispanic talent. So how do we work to identify turnover risk before they become problems? Mm-hmm. So with that, now that we've introduced our panel, we've talked a little bit about the premise here that we're focusing on, I'd like to move to our first question. And Kennon, I'd like to pose that one to you first. So a record of 4.5 million people quit their jobs in November of 2021. In your experience amongst your networks, friends and organizations, what are you noticing are the common reasons that people are choosing alternative paths? And by the way, if you notice my head down a little bit, it's because I love panels like this because all of my illustrious colleagues have insight and I like to take notes. So if you see me doing this, that's what I'm doing. So share with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you noticing are the most common reasons that people are choosing alternative paths?
I want to speak from experience, and I also want to speak more broadly. We're hiring a lot of people every month, and so we have a good window into at least from our perspective, what's going on to some extent. But I will say that I was really excited to see this question because I am a millennial who changed jobs in a pandemic. I joined Revature a couple of years ago, just a little bit under a couple of years ago, and so was firmly in this group actually. And I think there are a lot of things that hold for me that maybe don't hold for other folks, and vice versa. But of course, it's a huge movement that's going on right now. And there are a lot of fundamental drivers. One of the things that I think is really, really important is the obvious. Wage stagnation, cost of living increases. Folks are seeing that their job choices, not career choices, I would say job choices, may not have the upside that they thought they had, or they're maybe realizing that they need upside and that they need to think through what does the next 2 years looks like? What do the next 5 years look like? What do the next 10 years look like? And I think, of course, the pandemic is a big piece of that, but I think it started probably before the pandemic, to be honest, right? I think the pandemic, to some extent, exacerbated the issue and accelerated what we're seeing now, and maybe made it a little bit more condensed in terms of the impact it's had on the labor market. But putting aside the fact that people are smart and people understand that, hey, some things aren't working out, the math isn't really working. I think there are some really interesting developments, certainly in our industry and what we do, but in general in the labor industry, the talent space, where better, quote unquote, better jobs or more career sustaining, family sustaining, living wage jobs are becoming more attainable. And I think companies, the ones that are winning, are empowering people to believe that they can achieve these careers, right? Whether that's directly or indirectly, whether that's through creating an inclusive environment where people of diverse backgrounds and underrepresented backgrounds can see themselves in a career, and I'll use tech as an example because we're here, but can see themselves in tech, right, at an unprecedented rate. Mm-hmm. I think also we're having significant number of pathways open up to people, groups, individuals, whatever it is, that didn't exist previously, or at least weren't marketed well or weren't promoted well, right? So we're seeing a lot of folks make the jump, take the leap. And I think there are a couple of reasons that they're more able to do that than they were. One, a big one, is that we just did this for 2 years. We know that remote work is something that can happen. We know that jobs don't have to always be in the office. We know a lot of these things, or at least that's the perception. And so people are taking risks and jumping from careers when they're being told, hey, the pandemic's over, you got to come back into the office, right? Mm-hmm. In addition to that, I would say people know they have leverage. I think employees understand that this is a really big problem, and they understand that they have leverage. So if they're working for an employer that isn't able to meet them where they are, or meet their needs, or provide a value proposition to them that is inherently resonant to where they are in their lives and their careers, then they know they have options. So, I think that's a really high level, and it's what we're seeing to some extent. I think the really important thing to win, I know that's not what we're talking about, how do we bring solutions, but the really important thing to help underserved and underrepresented populations, or populations in general with talent, is to provide them a pathway for career and for long-term success professionally.
I think you really hit on there, providing a pathway, which has always been, well, not always, but I've noticed within organizations, people need to see that there is a pathway to whether they want to move up in an organization or move out in an organization. Because for years, what I've seen is, and with my own career, it has been, your trajectory is always to move up, right? That's the goal. Because when you move up, you have more career responsibilities, you have more tenure, and your compensation typically reflects that as well. But there are some of us also that not only want to move up, but we want to have breadth and depth, right? We want to move out, learn about different areas of the organization, et cetera. So let me ask some of our other panelists, if you have nothing else to add, I'd love for the other panelists to weigh in as well.
Yeah, I'm going to add +1 to Kennon's feedback. I think, folks are taking the time to really reflect and identify, what am I really passionate about? And can I find a company that will marry my purpose with my passion together? Mm-hmm. Where before you're you're on the hamster wheel, you're just, going, you have bills to pay, there are personal, reasons that you're sticking to a job or a company. And the pandemic, made you take a step back, like, wow, life is short. And I should be doing something that I really love while I'm here, and doing it really well with the passion that I feel that I can pour into something that, will allow me to gain an income for myself at the same time. So I think people are really being intentional about the companies and the roles that they take on. They're staying true to who they are, the work that they do, and honoring, and this is a big one, honoring the boundaries that they have set for themselves in terms of the things that they will or will not tolerate in the workplace. And so I think that is huge. And I also think I love that remote work is here to stay, because if I just think about the tech industry, right? We're here in tech. You think of Silicon Valley, you think of New York, you think Chicago, et cetera, and pockets, like Austin, et cetera. But people in like South Dakota can now apply for roles in tech. And so it allows people to have access to more opportunity, which is, for me, incredible. So for me, I think it's just awesome, because folks were limited in the opportunities that they could apply for in certain regions, certain cities, states, et cetera. And now the opportunities are endless. So I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. LaShaun?
Gosh, I think Kennon and Ileana just touched on so many great points there. But most importantly, it's just the fact that I think as a result of this pandemic, people were forced to take an additional look. We were forced to take a pause as well and to say, is this really serving me? Is this current role really fulfilling me in every way possible in my life? Or am I living to work? Because there are more important things for me to live for, whether it's my family or my hobbies or my passion or whatever that may be. We have crossed that point where there are greater things that exist beyond a 9 to 5. And now people have been exploring that and taking those risks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think all of you have summed it up nicely, proving out that remote work or a hybrid approach works, right? And looking at our purpose and our passion, right? And looking at what organizations are providing pathways for us, regardless of whether we are in the office, remote, or both, right? And so that's become more attractive to all of us. And I agree. I mean, as I said earlier, the pandemic caused a lot of us to stop, pause, think, reflect, and adjust. Mm-hmm. And part of that adjustment is either staying with our current organization because they are meeting our needs, we feel that as a value contributor to the organization, as well as we have that flexibility that we also had an opportunity to prove, because we could have proven that remote work doesn't work, but we proved it did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much on that. Go ahead, Kennon.
I just wanted to add one thing that just popped into my head right now. A couple things. One is, I think certainly the Great Resignation has driven a lot of change, right? Fundamentally, I think also people have now done this. They've now resigned and found better or more better fit or better financially, whatever it is, opportunities. So they know it's possible. So what's going on, I think, and what I think is going to happen, in my opinion, is that this is going to reverberate. It's going to have a ripple effect where it's not just because of the pandemic that this is going to happen. I think people will need to go into a new job, and it will need to be proven to them that it's the right job for them to retain, right? So it's forcing us as employers and forcing industry generally to do something that I think most, not all, but a lot of specifically large companies, a lot of companies in general, we're kind of in if you build it, they will come mode for a long time, right? And it's a job. People need a job. They got to survive, et cetera, et cetera. There were obviously big companies that used to compete for talent all the time, the top level talent. But now in tech, especially, kind of everybody that has a bachelor's in computer science is top level talent, right? Because there's such a dearth of tech talent. So I think we're going to see where people not only are harder to find, not only are harder to keep, but are definitely a little bit more willing to leave if it's not the right fit. And it's going to force companies to up their value proposition and the way that they attract and retain employees.
Definitely upping the value proposition is key. Because what I've noticed is it's not always about, there's a gym on site. Lovely perk, love to have it. But we really, again, turned our focus to our value contribution to the organization and in the ways that we contribute to the organization, as well as our customers, whether they're internal or external.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks felt for a long time overappreciated and undervalued. And that's no longer okay. And people are taking action on that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love that. Overappreciated and undervalued. I think that's a good way to sum it up. All right. So thank you, Kennon and our panel for outlining what may be driving this change in our workforce. So now, I'd like to pivot for a second over to LaShaun. LaShaun, you just recently moved into a new organization. So one, congratulations. Yeah, I know you are a welcome addition to Pyramid Consulting. So can you speak a little bit, if you don't mind sharing, on what pushed you to do so? Was your decision to move into this new role based more on the resignation side, not being retained properly or something of that element, or was it more focused on what your new path was going to bring to you professionally or personally?
Yes, thank you, Delia, for that question. I'd be happy to speak about my personal change experience in the workforce. I started focusing on my new path back in 2020. And I started by identifying the key areas where I wanted to focus my talents. I also reflected on what I was passionate about and where I could make an impact. Professionally and personally, I have always been intentional about helping others, advocating for representation, being a voice for the underrepresented. So when Pyramid Consulting reached out to me about leading their DE&I efforts, I saw this as the perfect opportunity that married not only my talents in business development and marketing and DE&I and training, but also my passion for helping others and my purpose in making an impact in the communities where I serve and live, and also making a purpose and impact in other people's lives.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And it really tees up as to what Ileana said earlier about, the marry between passion and purpose, et cetera. So putting you on the spot a little bit more, question that wasn't in the brief. So do you love where your path is taking you to in Pyramid? You're in this new role, you're having an opportunity to affect the outcomes of this organization's DE&I path because you're strategically leading that path. How's it working out? It's doing well, I'm assuming.
Yes, things are going very well. And another thing that a lot of people don't know, you may get this from my LinkedIn profile, you may not, but ever since I entered corporate America, I always had my day job, and then for some reason, I always found extra time to volunteer for some type of DE&I initiative. So for example, I served on a board for the largest nonprofit organization that provided professional development for women in cable and telecommunications, which is an industry that I was formerly in. So I served on their board of directors for nearly 10 years, recently served as president of one of their largest chapters. I have always been in these roles beyond my day job, championing representation for women, championing professional development for all women, and helping to ensure that leadership is diverse and that there are diverse voices that are represented. So again, when this opportunity came about, it's really full circle because all this extra work that I was doing in addition to my day job, it's now actually a part of my day job. So everything has come full circle for me.
That is amazing. That is amazing. So I'm also relatively new to Amazon Web Services. My day one started May 10th, 2021. And I've been in corporate for 20 plus years before I decided to move into entrepreneurship and do supplier diversity IT consulting with my own organization, my own company. And I always said that I would come back into the corporate fold if the challenge and the focus of what an organization's goals were high enough that they met with my passion and my purpose. And so that was actually what allured me as well to Amazon Web Services. And it gave me an opportunity as a principal to lead large transformational engagements, which happened to be my sweet spot. and I love it because when you're on that journey, for example, with an organization that is transforming their business, technology and the business marry together, and bringing that entire path together and then going through that journey, mega challenging for everyone because it's an opportunity to pivot, and it's an opportunity to better serve our customers. So partnering with our organizations in that way just did it for me. But at the same time, I was able to become a Hispanic speaking institute ambassador, and that fed my DE&I passion, just like high tech does, focusing on STEM, focusing on DE&I, focusing on feeding that pipeline of those that yet to come, right? So all of this, such as yourself, has really brought it forth as well. Ileana or Kennon, anything to add to LaShawn's story of how she pivoted in her from one organization to another, or anything in your illustrious career that you'd like to share?
I just love her story in terms of allowing her passion to kind of help her get into that next play, where she's now at Pyramid Consulting, and how that played such a big part in her taking that role. It's like almost like a no-brainer. Like, I've been doing this. I was made for this. So that to me is so empowering. And I love the work that she's doing to really push women forward. So thank you for that work. I also do the same. I absolutely love doing work within the DEI space, and which is why I was fortunate enough to get the co-chair role within our ERG at LinkedIn. I'm also on the board of a nonprofit that helps young Latina women and helping them navigate their collegiate and professional careers. And so that passion of me bringing people together and bringing our community forward is really what allows me to do some of the work I do at LinkedIn on a greater scale. And having that ability, again, I love the work that we do in building our global partnership team with our channel sales, but I love the work that I do within the ERG as well. So both together feed my passion of loving to build relationships and pour into my community in a big way. Absolutely.
Kennon, anything you'd like to add?
I'll add, just to make sure we round out the group. I actually had a little bit of a different story, same outcome, I think, to some extent. I got a job out of college, which wasn't that long ago, 10, 11 years ago, and was in a really advantageous position in terms of the way I performed, and I was in a performance-based job, and so moved up relatively quickly, and it was really, really great experience. But what we were doing was effectively marketing, right? And I kind of liken it to pulling money out of thin air, which is all, it all is what it is. Not a lot of tangible work product and results and impact, right? And I came to Revature because I was looking for upside, and I was looking for a new opportunity, and I didn't know that much about Revature. And came to Revature and realized that I haven't been passionate about anything I've done in my career until I got here. What we're doing is unbelievable. Like I said, it gets me up in the morning, keeps me up at night, and we have this incredible opportunity to legitimately impact the lives of not just thousands of people a year, which is what we do, but also their families and their children and their children's children. I mean, we really do have an opportunity to fundamentally change the way that people consider their career and consider their opportunity professionally, especially with the growth in tech and the increase, I think, coming in the next 10 years with respect to what we consider high skill jobs. It's really an amazing opportunity. So different reason I came here, same result. This is all I want to do the rest of my career. It's an absolute pleasure to work for Revature and to work in this industry and to be able to impact folks and impact companies and help people actually achieve what we've all kind of wanted people to achieve for a long time.
Right.
Can I add to that? One of the reasons I joined LinkedIn 3.5 years ago was because of their mission to create economic opportunity for every single member of the global workforce. And what that means for generations to come, I think is such a powerful statement and mission. And it really is what gets me up in the morning to do the work that we do. So +1 to that, Ken, and I totally relate.
Agreed. All right, so it looks like we're starting to get some audience questions. Yay, I love it when audiences are engaged, etc. I want to go on to our next question, and I did leave time at the end so that we can try to jump in on some of these questions that are coming. So LaShaun, thank you for sharing, as well as the panel on your experiences, etc. So far we've heard from Kennon and our panel on key reasons why people are making a big transition in their career. And we've heard firsthand from all of you, starting with LaShaun, on your experience. So now that we've had for some common reasons, people are willingly choosing to other paths. Can you share with us? And I'm gonna give this to Ileana. I apologize. Well, like, who am I talking to? Ileana, can you share with us what strategies your teams at LinkedIn are employing to identify turnover risks before they cause problems, and that the end result ends up with people leaving?
Yeah, great question. Personally, with the teams that I manage, we create, honestly, a safe and inclusive space where people feel completely empowered to be their authentic selves. This may sound like something so simple, but my God, it makes such a huge difference. LinkedIn, honestly, has always been a place where the world's workers access economic opportunity. In the midst of the Great Resignation, or Great Reshuffle, as we call it, we see a really unique opportunity and responsibility to help employers and employees navigate these unprecedented times, as you mentioned. And we're staying on top of what people are looking for today and realizing that a new relationship is actually emerging between employers and employees, as well as between individuals and the work that we're doing. And we're empowering a workforce on the move. We have more remote and hybrid workers than ever before. We've adapted all of our in-person growth and development programs to fully virtual, which is incredible. We've invested in scaling our DE&I team to provide that much more resources to our employees, as well as grow our ERG ecosystem, which is fantastic. We've given employees what we call lift up, no meeting days or well-being days, to encourage employees to take a rest day and focus on their well-being. I'm sure maybe some of you have heard, but we also have 2 full weeks where we shut down the company every year to ensure people are actually taking the time for themselves. At the end of the day, we have to rest, recharge, so we can actually run at 100% tomorrow. And we're keeping a really close eye on emerging trends and shifts happening around the world with Gen Z or women at work and our entrepreneurship and creator economy, as we look for new ways to invest in our employees and hire new talent. There's a really great opportunity or a possibility here for the relationship between employers and employees to be grounded in shared values and a common mission. And getting there, honestly, will require leaders at the top to engage with employees, but do that with trust and empathy, right? We're all going through these same changes. And it'll require new working models, continued investment in culture and values. And ultimately, it will require more dialogue between employers and employees to drive the best answers and bring people along as part of the process as we navigate these changes. Transparency is key, and bringing people along for the ride is going to be that much more important today than ever.
Absolutely, and I think you hit on it. More dialogue, definite transparency, and building that trust between employer and employee, more of a partnership rather than manager subordinate, if you will, is what I'm hearing.
Totally, absolutely.
So other panelists, Kennon or LaShaun, anything to add on the strategies that your teams are employing to identify turnover risks early before they become problems and results in an exodus, if you will?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit more about, at least from an ERG perspective, because in January of this year, Pyramid Consulting launched the staffing industry's first ERG program that is for corporate employees as well as for consultants. Now, the reason why this is significant is because in the transient workspace, those individuals are often left out when it comes to finding a place of belonging because they're on site for X amount of months or it's just a temporary assignment. But with our Belong In program, we are creating a place of belonging for our consultants so that way they have a place, they have a network where they can connect with other like-minded individuals, where they can discuss other projects, they can explore what other projects they could look forward to, and again, have that continuous round of employment with us. We want to help them find their next project. We don't want them to just be a one and done. We want them to stay and, for lack of better words, play, in this workforce and continue to be participative and have those different projects and work assignments. So that's just
anything to add, Kennon?
They really did a great job. I think piggybacking a little bit on what Ileana said, and generally what the kind of the theme of this segment is, creating a more inclusive environment, creating an environment where people want to be there. I think it's easy to say that out loud. It's really hard to do it authentically. One of the things that we're really trying to do, not only to attract and retain entry-level talent, because that is the majority of what we do as a company, but also for our corporate employees and for our employees who are, kind of managing the business, our leaders. How do we be more intentional about creating an inclusive environment in every respect, right? And then in addition to that, something Ileana said that I thought was really poignant was the relationship between manager and employee, or the relationship between superior and the people who report to them, however you want to phrase it, right? It is super critical, because there are a lot of things going on with the Great Resignation that I think a lot of managers feel like they could have fixed some of these problems if they were a little bit more in tune with the needs of their workforce. And I think as leaders in companies, specifically tech companies, specifically companies with a lot of disparate types of folks who work for them in different roles and a lot of different responsibilities in very complex organizations, doing a better job of helping their employees have a voice so they can help their managers understand where the issues are and rectify those. Nobody's perfect, and none of us have a crystal ball, is going to be really, really critical going forward.
Right, and I think it's important, LaShaun, what you just put in our chat box, which is, as leaders, we must create a space where employees feel that their voices will be heard and valued. And that's where I go back to, I'm a contributor to an organization. And when that, not only my voice gets heard, but it is viewed as that contribution to the entity as a whole for all of us, that's particularly important. So I agree with you. Great conversation thus far. So we have about 15 minutes left. We have one more question left that I'd like to pose to the panel. And then I'd like to pivot to some of the audience questions, because I think that there's a couple of here that they're all important, but I think I'd love for us to be able to touch on a few of them if we could. So, it looks like the questions are coming in from the audience. They have a lot to say. I love this. So let's kind of move forward. All right. So, thank you for outlining some existing best practices that you're instituting at your organizations to retain your talent and to identify some risks early. And I think you've hit it on the head, is dialogue is important, trust is important, that two-way bidirectional communication is vitally important, et cetera. So this last question I'm going to tee up to all of you. Whoever wants to jump in first, go right ahead. So what can business leaders do to retain talent? For example, how do you keep people engaged and happy so they don't leave? And I know we started to talk a little bit about that. Get involved in your employee resource groups as an example. But does this look different if we look through an ERG lens? So from there, let's start with Kennon. And then I'd like to move on to LaShaun and Ileana.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I want to preface this by saying, the vast majority of my focus as a professional is the acquisition and training and deployment of entry-level tech professionals. Okay, so I'm a little bit outside of my expertise when it comes to higher level relationships between employers and employees, and C-level to senior manager relations and things like that. So just to preface this by saying, I think one of the most important things that we can do as an industry is create clearly articulated pathways. I know I talked to this in the beginning of the session. I think the reason I'm bringing it up again is because I think it's the most important thing to me in my life professionally. And I think it's absolutely critical. I think you can do a lot of things wrong, but if you support your employees and have a clearly articulated pathway, not only to professional success and inter-organizational upward mobility, but social mobility and family sustaining jobs and careers, you can make a lot of mistakes, and as long as you're being honest with your employees and supporting your employees, you'll do a great job of retaining them. And I think another thing that's really important to consider when you're building pathways like that is the idea of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation, right? So obviously the extrinsic motivation, compensation, benefits, career path, raises, upward mobility. Like I said, that has to be there. But intrinsically, I think the best fit, the folks that are going to retain are the folks that you have to identify are the folks who believe in your mission, believe in what you're doing, and understand very, very intrinsically that what they're doing is making a significant impact, certainly for the business and certainly for themselves, but also for the client or people generally or society, right? And as the case may be. And we do a lot at Revature around certainly that extrinsic motivation and helping people understand that this is a pathway to a huge opportunity in a tech career and with Fortune 500 companies and with large organizations. And that's definitely true. And we have 10 years of history to back it up. But what we're working on and have been working on since the beginning of the pandemic and certainly before that is really thinking through how to message what we're doing and the impact we're bringing not only to us and to our clients, but also through our clients to the world at large, right? And tech is a great example of a space where you can do that because there's an unbelievable amount of opportunity to impact society and impact people. And so I think the point I'm trying to make is as you develop as a company, as you develop a strategy to help people understand why intrinsically they should be motivated to continue down the path and to stay at your organization, it is about messaging. Not everybody's going to get it immediately, right? You have to help people understand that we're not just here to collect a paycheck at this organization, right? And that, it's fine to be that, right? But really what we're doing as a leadership group or what we're doing at the CEO's office or whatever it is, right, is we're taking what we do and we're creating more impact than the sum of the parts, right? And I think messaging that appropriately for whatever company it is, whatever industry it is a huge piece of developing a retainable workforce.
Yeah. I'll add progress over perfection, right? This is, no one has it right today, but I think there's a lot of companies that are doing the right things to get to that perfect over time. I also think that, while money is a big driver for some folks, it's not what's going to keep you at an organization. And so chasing the check was totally my thing when I was in my 20s, and quickly realized that chasing the check is really not going to be what really fulfills me at all in what I'm doing. There were times where I was miserable and getting paid amazing. But what is that when, I'm unhappy and not doing my best work because I'm unhappy, or, my authenticity is not being celebrated, And so if I'm with an organization, I'm with LinkedIn right now, and I feel celebrated. I feel that my cup is being poured into in the same way that I'm pouring into their cup as my employer. And that's really important. And so if you have the check and that, you're golden. Right. But I just, a big message for those that are entering their careers, like chasing the check is great, but it's not going to be what's going to keep you at an organization in the long term. I think going back to what you had mentioned before in terms of what is something we can do from a leadership standpoint, or what organizations can do. Honestly, it's and one of the things that I've said in other forums is promote and demand diversity and inclusivity in the workplace, and hold leaders accountable. Those middle managers that are doing the hiring on an everyday basis and that they're recruiting for roles, they have to be committed just as much as senior leaders at an organization. And if they are not, there will be a level of incongruency somewhere in the middle. And you have to find what teams or what person is causing that. And so everyone has to be speaking the same language at your organization from top to bottom to top. That is the only way you're going to have that consistency over time, which is what's going to yield success. And success over time is what yields excellence. And so if you are able to do that and do that with your messaging, as Kennon had mentioned, I think that's what this is about, right? Like getting to perfection or getting to that excellence over perfection. And that's what I would say, we need to have our leaders, our senior leaders holding folks accountable, that they are having diverse slates when they're hiring for roles, that they are looking for different skill sets that could complement what they're trying to do on their teams, and that they are looking outside of New York City or Silicon Valley or Austin, but opening it up because now the world has changed to now allow for remote and hybrid opportunities to come about. So That's all I'll add there.
I agree. And I love what you just said. I feel celebrated, right? And when you feel celebrated, that means your voice is heard. You're viewing yourself as a valuable contributor, and you're in alignment with that messaging. You're in alignment with the mission, the goals of the organization. And when you feel celebrated, you actually contribute more because you are supported and helped along the way, in terms of, especially when you have a clearly articulated pathway, as you mentioned, Kennon. Anything you want to add, LaShaun, before we jump into some questions?
Gosh, there were just so many gems that Ileana shared. I'm just nodding my head like, yep, I was looking for that earlier on in my career, absolutely. And so for those who are just starting out, on your path, look out for what's important to you beyond just getting the check. So look to see if that company is investing in you. What type of benefits do they offer that contribute towards your professional development? What are some opportunities for you to get more visibility with senior leaders? How do you pursue stretch assignments? Who is it that you need to talk to get on certain task force to work on innovative projects that are moving the company forward? And also, there was a question in the chat that I did just want to speak on about stretch assignments and company boards. Identify a nonprofit organization that aligns with your industry. These are great organizations for you to engage for those leadership roles. So like I mentioned, the Professional Development Organization for Women in the cable telecommunications industry, that was perfect for me because my whole career at the time was in telecom. It was highly visible. All the companies in telecom sponsored and invested in that organization, which not only put me in a position to help others, but also gave me great visibility amongst my peers and senior leaders across the entire industry. And in those spaces is where you can take risk. When you're volunteering for stuff, what's the worst that can happen? If you make a mistake, maybe you don't volunteer for the next year. No big deal. But this is where you can get more comfortable taking risks and then also learning more about your leadership style, which you can then take into your 9 to 5, so to speak.
Right. Absolutely. Well, originally what I was going to prescribe for us was to give some parting thoughts. We've heard some great things today in terms of some common reasons why we're seeing this great resignation continue. And some of that is not having a clearly articulated pathway, showing that remote work could work. And so many of us are looking for either remote work totally hybrid, or some of us love being in the office, and that's okay too. And we've also looked at, some of our experiences, like LaShaun, you shared with us what was the allure and the reason for pivoting into a different organization, which allowed you to match your purpose with your passion, which was a great example. Exactly. And then what can we do to retain talent in terms of ERGs, looking at how organizational leaders can better articulate the messages, right? Their key messages, and to build that bridge between leadership, between our employees, our resources, who are our partners in what we do. And I think that's clearly important, to be transparent, as we said, to build that trust, et cetera, and to value our contributing resources. The reason why we are here is because we have this mission, this goals, this opportunity to make an impact for our consumers, our services that are outlined, our community, et cetera. So all of you did a great job. I think in this last question, you did give some pivotal insight. What I'd like to do, if all three of you are okay, is move towards some of the questions, because we have about 5 minutes left at the most. And that's because we've had a great conversation. But I'd like to be able to at least answer one or two of the questions that are left. Are all of you game for that? Great. So I'm going to start from back upwards, only because that's what I can see in my chat box. One of the questions was, do you find that major tech companies transitioning from working from home to promoting flexibility has also created a culture of always on, always connected? So what are your predictions for the adoption rate, if any, of the 4-day work week? So I can tell you that for many organizations that I have worked for previously, I've always been always on, always, always on, always connected. But that was more of a personal mantra of mine. rather than a work requirement. I know in my present role, there is a very big push to have that work-life balance. But, you know, there's many times that I feel committed to reach out and get a question answered, if you will. So in regards to what are my predictions for the adoption of the 4-day work week, I think it's here to stay. I don't think it's here to go away. I think that what I see in many organizations, especially in the tech world, is that more hybrid path than going back to a straight 5-day work week. What about you, panel? Anyone?
I don't want to predict the future, but what I will say is I think it's really important to set your own personal boundaries, because the always on, always connected most of the time is a personal choice, because this is about a choice to not turn off because of that fear of missing out or an email. You know, I've been in sales for, I won't say how many years, so I don't want to date myself, but a long time. And, you know, when you're in sales, you don't want to miss an email or, you know, a text that might come through from a client because you feel like that might be another sale coming through or an opportunity for more revenue to come through. And when you're off, you should really be off. Don't check your Outlook or your Gmail or anything like that. I know that's very difficult for a lot of folks, including myself. I'm a work in progress. But I think the always on, always connected mentality is actually self-inflicted, not a company mandate. Now, if the culture is of a company, because I have worked in companies like this, where you are expected to be always on and always connected, then you have a choice as an individual to say, they're going beyond the boundaries that I have set for myself, for my own well-being, in order for me to work most effectively and to drive the most success in my role. If that type of company doesn't align with your values and your morals as a person and what you're really trying to establish in your career, then it might be the time to evaluate, you know, if this is the right organization or role for you. And so I think a lot of times, and just from personal experience, that always on and always connected mentality has always been self-inflicted, and you have to learn how to set and respect the boundaries that you set for yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it looks like we've got some great questions I really wanted to get to. We have about 45 seconds. Any last parting words? What I will do is I will encourage those that did not get to answer to their questions, and I apologize. We had such a great discussion. We'll have to make ourselves available. I think, LaShaun, you had put your LinkedIn available out on the chat. I encourage my other panelists to do so. But from a last, 30 seconds, anyone want to give their last insights, etc.? If not, I will. I think, one of the things that's been brought up is clearly articulate pathways. And I think it's up to us as well to articulate ourselves what we're looking for, our value and our contributions to the organizations we are with, and for our leaders to create that open dialogue, that bi-directional dialogue, and create that trust and that bridge between our leaders, our senior leadership, and our resources that we do value within our organizations. And I think that key messaging is absolutely clear and pivotal, as well as having clearly articulated pathways and growing ourselves by doing things like or other organizations we have a passion for, our ERGs and so forth. So I want to thank every one of our panelists, Ileana Acosta, Kennon Harrison, and LaShaun Solomon. Thank you so much for your time and your investment in this great topic. And again, most of us have put up our, if not all, our LinkedIn on our chat. Please feel free to reach out to us. We are here for you. And onward and upward, everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.